Welcome back. I'm Blaine Sundard with AWS Training and Certification and AWS Deep Racer. In our last video, we unboxed our AWS Deep Racer and got our batteries charging and ready for assembly. So let's go ahead and get to assembly phase. First part in assembly is installing the car battery. Once we unplug it from the charging station, we take the red adapter and that plugs into the red input. And that double beep means we've got a charge. So to install the battery, we go ahead and put it in label side up. And then there is a Velcro hook here. Now the pins go specifically so that the circle side of the pin is in the middle. This will prevent any accidental connection with the tires. So now, with the compute layer secured, the next step is to connect the compute layer to physical power. Now, you could connect the battery direct, but we're about to configure the Wi-Fi. And as a best practice, we want to make sure we start with ground electricity so that there's no problems that might come up. We know we've got a solid connection. So in your kit, you should have the USB to power connector. Until that happens. All right, we can see now that the power light has turned blue. Compute layer has now properly booted. Time to connect it to my laptop here so we can configure the Wi-Fi. To do that on your laptop, first thing you need to do is disconnect your laptop from the Wi-Fi. If you do, then it's going to try to get mixed signals. So once your laptop is disconnected, we take the micro USB to USB-A cable and we plug in the micro USB into your laptop. And final step is open up a browser and go to deepracer.aws. If you did everything right, in my case, in Firefox, you get a warning saying, hey, we don't recognize this particular server. That's fine, we expect that. Go ahead and say, yep, we want to accept that. So accept the risk and continue. And at this point, it asks you for the password. Every Deep Racer car has a unique password that can be found on the bottom of the car. Now, this is a password you're going to need a couple times throughout the launch process. So take a moment and write it down. There, now I've got the password ready for me, so I can enter it as we need. Go ahead and enter it into the computer. So now that we're in, it's time to set the Wi-Fi network connection. In the bottom here, update Wi-Fi network, spin that. And now we need to select the Wi-Fi network name. Where are we going to connect the Deep Racer to when it's out there driving around? In this case, I have a guest network I'm going to connect to. And we type in the super secret password for that. And connect. So now that we are connected, it's now going to give us an IP address. So now our vehicle has an IP address. Go ahead and write this down as well. You will need to do this if you want to connect to your car from the browser, which we're going to want to do. So in my case, 192.168.3.91. Fabulous. Okay. Now that the vehicle has an IP address, we can go ahead and disconnect it from the laptop. So unplug that. And let's turn this thing back right side up. It's been upside down for too long. Now we need to power down the compute module. So power button on the left-hand side. Hit that, hold it down for a couple seconds. And that powers it off. Now that it's powered off, we can go ahead and unplug it from the wall power. And time to connect the battery. Again, you might have one of two batteries. If you have the Energear battery, you go ahead and plug that directly into the USB-C slot. If you have the Dell battery, go ahead and remove it from the docking station. And then go ahead and add on the cable manager. Now to connect the power cable, you want to start with the right angle, and that connects in the device to the nice little socket you've got right there. With that connected, we then take the USB-C and plug that into the power outlet. Then take the battery, slide it into the carriage, strap it down for security, and finally take the leftover cable, and that goes right into the cable manager. Perfect. All right, with that set, go ahead and power the Deep Racer back up, hitting the power button, the compute side. And again, we wait for the minute or so for it to get back to blue. At this point, you should see two blue lights. The power, which we've seen before, and now the blue Wi-Fi light, meaning that we've got good connectivity to our local Wi-Fi. Final step in assembly, let's put the shell back on. And pins go back on. And that's it. We have completed the assembly phase. Next, calibration. Go ahead and log into the IP address of your Deep Racer. Now, you probably need to be on the same Wi-Fi router as the Deep Racer in order to connect to it. I've already connected to mine, and it is time to calibrate. So on the left-hand side, select calibration. Let's start with calibrating the steering. The first thing it asks you to do is to set the vehicle on the ground. Now for me, I've taken just the roll of tape that comes with the car and balanced the car on top of that. All four wheels are free to turn. They can steer right and left. That way we can see how fast they go, make sure they're calibrated. I'm all set. Click Next. So now we want to calibrate the steering angle. Rotate this towards you. An important thing to remember in steering is the left wheel and the right wheel are never parallel to each other. This is part of that Ackerman steering that allows it to corner so well. We want to calibrate this car so that the left wheel is aligned with the back wheel. So in this case, we've got a slider here, and as we turn it more towards -10, the wheels are turning more to the right. As we go more towards +10, the wheels turn more to the left, until eventually we find that perfect line that says the left wheel front, left wheel back are aligned. Now, the nice thing is when you're done with all this calibration, if you come back next week, next month, you can always recalibrate your car. That looks pretty good to me. Next step. Now we want to find out what the maximum left is. And just like power steering, there's a certain maximum that the wheels can turn, even though you could try to turn the steering wheel past that point. In this case, all the way at 30 degrees left, I can hear that the servos are kind of maxed out. So let's go ahead and back it down a bit. So as we turn it down and bring it forward, eventually the wheels start turning towards the right. And then we go back towards the left until the wheels do not turn anymore, and that becomes the maximum left angle. So we're going to click through here a bit. Still turning. And that seems to be about it. So it looks like 24 degrees left is going to be my maximum left turn. Let's take a look at right. Again, defaults to -30. Let's go ahead and back that out. Okay, and now as the wheels are turning again, let's go ahead and rotate it until they stop turning. Okay. And that's about it. So -20 to the right also becomes my maximum right. And that's it. We are done with calibrating the steering. Our next step is to actually calibrate the speed. So let's go ahead and hit that. Now, again, as you calibrate the speed, it's important to make sure these wheels can turn freely because you're about to run these wheels as fast as they can go. We want to know what the maximum forward velocity of your vehicle is. And oddly enough, we want to know what the maximum reverse velocity of your vehicle is. Now, right now, we don't compete the cars driving backwards, but the cars certainly can drive backwards. So once we're set, your wheels spin freely. The next step is to find out what stopped is. Your car has a drive battery, and that car battery is sending out a charge, and we need to know at what point of the charge do the wheels think is 0. So for example, if I go to what is marked as 0 on my element here, my wheels are actually turning backwards. 0 is not 0 for me. So if I reduce that a little bit, eventually, and I can hear a little bit of a whine, and the whine goes away at -6. This to me is a neutral charge. Nothing's moving forward, nothing's moving backwards. That's great for me. Now, when you click next, it's about to get really loud because now we're trying to see how fast the car can go. Let me turn that down for a bit. This next screen is a simple one. We just want to make sure we've got the battery oriented properly and that forward is forward. So all we're doing right here is checking to make sure the wheels are turning in the right direction. Once they are, let's set our forward speed. So now we calibrate the maximum forward speed. And this is how many meters per second your car will drive when it is at 100% throttle. Now you'll notice that you get to pick how fast it's going, whether you're going a normal speed of a couple meters per second. Right now in our competitions, we're getting people up as fast as 4 meters, 5 meters per second, but that's getting into the turbo range and possibly the dangerous range. So you'll set what you consider to be a good fast speed. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and set it up at about a 27 or so. You can see the wheels are moving forward. Next step, backwards. And once again, we want to set what's our maximum backward speed. Go ahead and set it at a speed you're comfortable with. And click done. All right. That's it. The car is calibrated and you're ready to race. At this point, you should see two blue lights. The power, which we've seen before, and now the blue Wi-Fi light, meaning that we've got good connectivity to our local Wi-Fi. Final step in assembly, put the shell back on. And pins go back on. And that's it. We have completed the assembly phase. Next, calibration. Go ahead and log into the IP address of your deep racer. Now, you probably need to be on the same Wi-Fi router as the deep racer in order to connect to it. I've already connected to mine, and it is time to calibrate. So on the left-hand side, select calibration. Let's start with calibrating the steering. Now we need to select the Wi-Fi network name. Where are we going to connect the deep racer to when it's out there driving a laptop? track. You got this one. Here it goes. Stay on. No, stay on, stay on, stay on. Okay, we got this in. There it is. Nice,
yes.
nice. Time. 67 seconds.
Woo!
Good. That's a good first time around.
Thank you. So what was your first time around?
68, so better than
Okay.
mine. Now my current time, 41 seconds.
No way.
41's my current time.
That's awesome.
Developers, I'm here with Michelle, and we're having fun getting our fingers dirty on the track.
Yeah.
So as we talk about differences in time, the way you get there is one of the cool things about Deep Racer and reinforcement learning itself. It's being able to look at all the options and the parameters and the hyperparameters, and each one of those are knobs you can turn and tweak, and sometimes you get a little improvement, sometimes you'll see a really big improvement. Sometimes you'll just experiment and it might work and it might not, but you'll learn from that as well.
That's awesome. As a curriculum developer, it's the first time I've ever touched something like this, and it's amazing to get it to actually work.
Well, and that's the fun thing is you can get an immediate good response.
Yeah, so I have to ask, if I keep tweaking this, I keep playing, am I gonna be able to get to 41 seconds?
Well, the truth is you'll probably do better than me. There's a lot of people right now on the leaderboard that have times better than mine.
Wow.
So with that, we're gonna go ahead and go back into the simulator and learn how to tune your models and eventually get right back on the track. Welcome back. Now that you've seen the car, learned how reinforcement learning is driving it, and watched me and Michelle race around the track, you're probably ready to get started. I bet you want to find out how to build and train your own models so that your car performs at or beyond the level of my performance, and that's great. But it's pretty difficult to accomplish that right out of the gate. You have to take a few small steps first. This section will walk you through a demo of building your first model using only the default options the Service Console provides. No tweaks or any fancy customization just yet. Join me while I walk you through this process in the AWS Deep Racer console. Feel free to follow along. First, navigate to the console. You can do this right from the AWS Deep Racer homepage at the URL you see here on the screen. After you select the button to create the model, you'll be taken to a screen where you'll see different sections for things like model details. So let's talk about those. This top section is where you equip your AWS Deep Racer with all the necessary services and permissions it requires to train and run smoothly and safely. If you want, you can get more information about what each of these resources do and how they all connect to AWS Deep Racer, or you can just click on the button to begin creating these resources. Next, choose an environment. There are a handful of options to choose from, which is great because it means you can expose your model to different tracks with varying degrees of twists and turns. Now, the action space is what defines the range of actions your vehicle can take, either virtually or physically. You tell it what its maximum speed should be, as well as its steering angles for left and right turns. Again, we'll get into all of this later, so just take a look, get comfortable, and if you're following along, just use the default settings to configure your speed and your angles. You need to help your model by specifying which actions to reward your car for taking. This happens via the reward function. Reward functions are what incentivize or reinforce particular behaviors. These rewards are the core of reinforcement learning. We'll get into reward functions later, but just look around in here and get familiar with the language. I'd recommend starting with the basic function first and then getting more advanced, but that's up to you. Same thing with algorithm settings. Now, I'm going to cover all of them later on in the course. I'll explain what hyperparameters are, including things like entropy and epochs, and how to tune them. But for now, just get comfortable with the language. For the first run-through, feel free to just use the default settings. Finally, before you start training, you need to tell your training job when it should stop. So you're going to set up some stop conditions. These are intended to help prevent runaway models that could incur costs if you don't limit the time they run for. Again, at this stage, you might want to just stick to the default settings, especially if this is your first time through the model building process. And with that, you can click on the Start Training button and watch as your model moves and reacts to the parameters you set for it. Pretty savvy, right? Well, congratulations! You just built your first model with AWS Deep Racer. Now, there's lots of room for improvement here, as you may have noticed. The trick is to slowly iterate on your model, making incremental changes that will eventually have a big impact on your car's performance. But before we go there, let's back it up a bit and dive more deeply into reinforcement learning and how exactly it helps to make this 1/18th scale racing car fully autonomous. That's coming up in our next course section, so stay tuned.